The government is blamed for a lot of things that they literally have no control over. None whatsoever. Those of you listen to Ancient Aliens, they talk about ET disclosure and the government's blocking it. How can the government block it when the president is 26 levels of secrecy below that level? That's the president, never mind the Congress or the House or the Senate. It's not the government blocking it. And then you have the 3, 4 and 5 letter groups with no congressional oversight, and yet people blame the government. The government were blocked out of any involvement or direct knowledge of the ET issue after the humanity treasonist Eisenhower sold us out. And this is why Kennedy tried to get the ET papers lowered to government level and signed off an agreement with his Russian counterpart at the time, Brezhnev, in November 1963. And the gist of that is America and the USSR, as it was then, would exchange all ET-related papers to each country. And this, in effect, was an attack on the secrecy levels, now known as the deep state. The peoples in the secrecy levels go up to 49, although I do hear that number it goes higher, a little bit higher. So whilst the president level is 23, and Kennedy signed that agreement 11 to 12 days later, Kennedy was dead. This is what the governments are dealing with. Now I would hazard caution that JFK was not all for the people. I know for a fact that it was part of a faction war. A bit like now. How far Trump's into that faction war remains to be seen at this point. But we do have a 6th faction now. It's called We the People. And boy is that growing. But the government has no control over the military. In part, this is part of the inner war described. The US military is either owned by the SSP, SS small p, which we can confirm, but the Rothschilds think they own it, and also the Jesuits are claiming the US military that they've owned it since the 1500s. The government has no control over income tax or receives any of it. For those new to the show, the IRS is not an American company, and it's not even on American soil. It's a trust of the Crown stationed in Puerto Rico, a collection agency for the Federal Reserve. The government has no control over the Fed or the IRS, as they are operatives for and by the Crown. The government has no control over the media, as proven more so over the past 18 months than any other time. There's a reason why Trump's calling it fake news. And if you think it's recent, it all started with CBS back in the 1920s. Now I wonder how many people realised what the C stands for. Columbia, as in District of Columbia. CBS were working with OSS, now known as the CIA, to produce propaganda for the American audiences as far back as 1920. The government has no control over the SS small p, the real secret space program that's been ongoing since the 1940s minimum, part of which was the Majestic 12 until recently, and they were all taken out by the order. Bye-bye Majestic 12. Why? Because some of them in there wanted disclosure. The government has no control over policy. That is dictated way higher up. I think many of you are now seeing that. And the government has no control, and neither do the people, until possibly the last election. Time will tell on that issue of who is voted in or out. Maybe it's time to stop blaming the government for everything and target who are the real issue. You can go and research all those facts for yourself. You'll come to the same conclusion. A government, in essence, is almost irrelevant. We think it's important. We think that they block this and they don't do this. They have no choice in it until we get an American government, not a USA Inc. corporation, operating as the government like now, and some proper governing where we have oversight of all the 3-letter, 4-letter and the 5-letter groups. Then you can blame the government. Until then, you have to look far higher as to who's holding the puppet strings.